I thought the scrimmage went well. We did some really good things on defense. I thought we tackled pretty well. A couple missed ones we got to get cleaned up, but overall, I thought the tackling was really well, and that's what you want to see. You know, when we go live, that's the piece we haven't got as much yet. Caused a couple turnovers. Coach Frost put us in some good situations that we need to teach from and get that dialed in. Because with this older group, it's going to be a little bit more about getting lined up and executing the defense, and more about mastering the situations as we move forward. So I think a little more of that work is necessary, but I was pretty pleased.
What are you still trying to learn in the next week or two about this unit?
About this unit, probably what are we going to try to learn is probably who's the next guys up, because there's, you know, that first string, even though it's not solidified yet, there's still a lot of guys battling for reps, probably a lot of guys that deserve reps in games. Don't know if we're going to get all of them, you know, to play, because there's so many guys that are playing at a high level right now. But just who's going to be those next group in, and then are you that next guy in, and can you play on special teams because you're going on the trip?
You said before that those tackling defense has to be the heavyweight champ of the world. Why is that? What does that mean?
When we're playing against big people and we're in 3-4 spacing, that guy's responsible for 2A gaps a lot of times, and he's got to really control that center. So that's got to be a man there, and he's got to understand, you know, he's kind of like the center on offense. His name's not going to get in the paper a whole bunch, but he's going to really help the team.
Damien, a lot of people talk about how Damien's in much better shape this year. How do you balance trying to make those types of players more mobile, but also ensure that they can still take up that space within those two if there's form and they need it?
Well, that's why we got the strength and conditioning guys and the nutritionists, but they've done a great job with all those D linemen of making sure they keep their bulk, and they also are being able to move, and with Damien just being able to play, you know, 8 reps at a time instead of 2, and he's done a really good job of that so far this fall.
What looks different about him this year?
His body looks different. He looks more twitchy. You know, he looks more lean. He just looks like he's able to play hard. If we leave him in there for 2 or 4 or 8, he's able to go the whole time, and I think that's a huge win for him and us.
I know Tyreek Johnson has only been around for 9 practices or so, but what stands out to you about him so far?
Well, obviously he's got some experience in the league. He's played in games, so the situation's really not too big for him, as it is sometimes with a new guy coming in the program, whether they're from a smaller school or a freshman. So he's got a lot of confidence. He's got a lot of grit to him, and he also knows the technique really well. It's just, you know, learning a new language probably for him with the defense. But he's a really good football player. He's got really good movement skills. He's done some really nice things in 9 practices.
Joe last year, I feel like he never really left the field much. If you want the sort of same workload on him, but with a longer season,
Yeah, I think with the longer season, it's going to be hard for him to have that workload. But I think we've developed some depth at that position. Isaac Gifford, you know, Javen Wright, Simon Odie, John Bullock have all done a really good job there. So I think we have the opportunity to get JoJo a little rest this year, and hopefully get all those guys playing on special teams as well. But I think you're right. It's going to be hard for him to take the same workload with the full season.
how deep do you think the D-line can go? Like, how many are you feeling comfortable with, or how deep do you want it to go?
I mean, you know, you're definitely talking about 2 platoons at every position up front, and probably a third at most. So it's a pretty deep group. You know, you definitely want to, now that we've developed some depth, you want to get those guys some breaks. You know, you want them to be able to rush the passer and be fresh for that and play the run. But you also want to get the best guys enough reps. So I think that's a good balancing act, and Coach Tuioti, Coach Dawson are doing a good job with rotating those guys right now. And I don't see a huge drop-off between the 1s and the 2s.
How's your team held up health-wise? Have you hit that kind of camp wall where you got a lot of guys kind of having to rest in this second?
You know what? We haven't had a bunch of guys that have had to rest. You know, guys get nicked up here and there, and maybe you know, if they get nicked up and they're a vet that's, you know, proving themselves, all kind of things, maybe you shut it down for that day to keep it from getting into something worse. But there hasn't been a lot of guys where we've had to just say, hey, he needs 2 days down or anything like that. I think these guys have done a nice job of taking care of their bodies and getting ready to roll the next day.
You feel good about you're in a position with enough veteran where you don't have to force young guys right into the fray right away, and do they kind of understand it, those young guys, sort of like looking at the depth chart? There's a lot of experience around it.
To be honest with you, I think, it is a good feeling, obviously, but I think that we're to the point also with maturity that those older guys are taking those younger guys and helping them and saying, take my job, but you're not going to do it. I want you to try to take this thing. I want you to practice hard. I want to see if you can get in the game as a reserve role or special teams, and I'm going to help you, but I know you can't take my job, and I think that's a pretty good feeling.
We were talking, maybe you're asked about DeAndre over here who's doing interviews. What can he give you? I know last year sort of just got deleted for him with the injury, but what can he bring to the table?
Yeah, so far DeAndre's done a really good job. He's a little different than some of those other guys. He's not quite as big, but he's got a little wiggle to him, and he seems to have a knack to find the ball and to find the open spot in the pass rush. So I think there's definitely a role for him moving forward.
When you guys first got here, you talked about having your defense rotate in and out like hockey lines.
Yep.
Like you really hadn't been able to do that because of the depth. Do you feel like in year 4 you're going to see the hockey lines coming in and out this year?
Yeah, and I think especially up front. Especially up front, outside backers, D-line, inside backers are going to roll, whether that's 4 guys or 3 guys, but you're going to see those guys roll. The DBs has always been a little different story. I think you're going to see those guys get subbed in and out, but that's really not as much of a hockey rotation there because it's so important for those guys to make calls back there. But I think up front, you'll definitely see some mass substitutions coming.
So like for those 7 front spots, would it be like 12, 14, 16? Like what's the number that you could rotate in for those 7 spots? If you had to
Number of guys?
Yeah, you feel like you're 14 deep, 16 deep, 18 deep?
Yeah, for those 7 spots, I definitely think that there's at least 14. Probably in that up front D line, there's probably at a 15, 16, 17 in there.